I'm going to show you a foolproof way to grow persimmons into trees from the seeds from the fruit. This one here started from a cutting from a persimmon tree that I rooted, and it has been here now for 4 years. It's the most successful one that I've grown yet from a cutting. This is another one here that I have protected from the deer because it's still a little too short. It's just reaching the top of this little barrier here. And there's another one over here, also with a barrier, that is also from a cutting. I planted all 3 of these on the same day 4 years ago. Obviously this one worked the best, but that being said, it was already about this size when I initially planted it. And so in the 4 years since then, it's only grown this much. This is how much it grew last year. It was the most successful year yet. Hopefully this year it'll do even better. Now I'm going to show you some that I've grown from seeds. This is one that I grew from seed just last year, and it's remarkably successful. It had a little bit of a problem early on because when I grew it from the seed indoors over the winter, it leaned towards the window, and so it's got this bizarre kink at the bottom, and then it straightens up again with some encouragement I gave it over the summer last year. But this is a beautiful amount of growth for a single year from a seed. And I've already cut here at the top. I should talk about pruning in another episode, but this is an early start so that it will produce the right form for picking fruit. Getting an early start on this one. Anyway, so look at the beautiful growth on this in 1 year. And here in Canada, the southernmost part of Canada here on the north shore of Lake Erie, it's not the easiest thing to grow. Now I'm going to get into explaining how to do it yourself. Okay, I'm in the garden. One of the gardens, the one that's closest to the house. This is a nice sheltered spot. And I've been growing persimmons quite by accident here in the garden over the last year because I had collected so many seeds that I was sprouting indoors that I actually had too many. And so I just carelessly tossed some. As you can see, there's a lot of garden waste and cuttings and whatnot here. And what I did is last year, because I had so many, I planted some. And this is one right here. This is a baby persimmon that sprouted last year, and I left it in the garden here. This was untended. This is another one, and another, and another, and another. There are a lot of persimmons growing here in my garden now. But as you can see, this is the best of the bunch, and it grew a tiny fraction of that one that I just showed you. And the difference is that I didn't tend to this one. And this one popped up here over the winter and sprouted in the spring. And so this is probably quite successful for a single year's growth that began late in the spring. It's still winter for another week or so. And here there are plenty of persimmons, seeds that I had tossed that didn't. These are from that same year, from 2 years ago now. And so these are just sterile seeds that didn't make it. And I probably tossed several hundred seeds. I can easily fill my hand with seeds while I'm talking here. There are so many. The garden is strewn with persimmon seeds. And out of the hundreds, a handful had managed to sprout, because it was just pure luck, because of our harsh winters, that these seeds didn't freeze. I imagine it is 1 in 100 or maybe even 1 in 1,000 that actually gets the right conditions to just sprout in the ground, lying on the ground like this with our freezing winter. And so what I did this year as an experiment is I took a few, and these are from some that I ate last fall, and I took a few seeds and I put them here under this bowl. I overturned this bowl on top of them, and I left it here for the whole winter. It was covered in snow and ice, and so now I'm just going to get it open, and there you see, here's a handful of beautiful little persimmon seeds here that stayed out here on the ground with this bowl overturned on them for the whole winter. And they're beautifully puffed up, which means that inside it's getting ready to sprout. And it's too early. It's still winter. But because of these conditions that were provided by lying on the ground so that they were exposed to the changing conditions, and right now, because we're engaged in the thaw, the ground is quite wet. And so they are wet to the touch. They've been sitting on that wet ground, and this sends them the right signals. They know that it's almost time, but not quite yet, because it's still far too cold, especially at night. And so now the thing to do is to put these into a small pot of soil and do exactly as I did here. Just lay them flat in the pot of soil on the top of it, and put it in a sunny window and keep it well watered. And very soon, especially with nice sunny heat, they will soon sprout. They'll pop open. And I don't plant them. I'm going to give you a little bit of a tip here. I don't plant them in the soil when I'm sprouting them. I just set them on top, just like that. And what will happen is, when this breaks open, this little pod, a little tail will come out, a sprout, and it will go down into the soil, and then it will actually stand this up and shoot it up airborne, and it'll eventually actually shed it. It'll discard the shell, and the lovely leader will open up and leaves will start to form almost immediately. It's actually really beautiful to watch the little persimmons grow. And that's all there is to it. You just leave them in the pot and let them grow, and they'll get their head start. As I said, it's the last week of winter. And so if I take these in now and do that, probably in the next week or two, they will pop their little tails out and start growing. And so long before, in this area, it's generally the last week of May when it's time to start having things outside. And so this would give them a good 2 months head start. And so they could already be far larger than this one with the maximum growth that it achieved for the whole growing season. And that would be before putting them outside to finish their growing season outside. And then you just plant them in the ground and let them go. And that's what I did with that one that I showed you at the beginning of the video that is probably outside the top of this shot in terms of its height compared to this one. The only difference is this one started growing in June and the other one started growing in March.